What you're hearing now is a Gayageum performance by Dr. Jocelyn Clark. She's a musician and a professor, and also now the first non-Korean to be named an official master of Gayageum Sanjo, a traditional Korean music genre recognized as an intangible cultural heritage of North Jeolla province. This has been hailed as an incredible feat, as even Koreans who have studied for more than 10 years have often failed to reach this level. Dr. Clark performs across the country while also passing on Korean traditional music to her students at Pai Chai University in Daejeon. And I'm delighted to say that she is back in the studio with us for another appearance on Korea24 to tell us about her latest achievement and more. Let's bring her in now. Dr. Clark, hello. It's great to have you with us today.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
So, well, Ms. Clark, this is your second time on the show, as I mentioned. You were last here on the show more than 6 years ago now, although that was before my time. But since then, you have recently become the first non-Korean master of Gayageum Sanjo. A huge congratulations. How do you feel?
I feel great. I feel, surprised and relieved, and and then I see the next mountain in front of me. So it's short-lived, but it also feels, actually, you know what it feels like? It feels like getting a degree in a university. That's what it actually feels like.
So that's what it feels like. How have people around you reacted to it as well?
Everybody's quite, happy about it. My teacher was happy for about one day, and now she's yelling at me again. So, a short day to celebrate, and then keep going on.
Okay, so your training is in the Jeollabuk-do Intangible Cultural Heritage number 40, Gayageum Sanjo. Can you tell us a bit more what that means? What is Sanjo, and how does it differ from other styles of Gayageum music?
So Sanjo was started to be developed about 200 years ago. It came out of, solos that were played in Shinawi. This is another kind of music, a group music. You can think of it in a way, I think people are more familiar with pansori, so you can think of it in a way as being pansori without words, like instrumental pansori. The modes and the rhythm patterns and all of that are pretty much the same as pansori. So it became in the 20th century the main virtuosic instrumental solo genre. So everybody has to play it in order to get into their university system, for instance, if they're going to go on to get a degree in the university. And it's the main sort of solo. It has been in the 20th century, at least, the main solo repertoire for most of the instruments that are popular in Jeollabuk-do. So Gayageum was the first to make Sanjo, and we have Komungo, Gayageum, Haegeum, Taegeum, Ajeng, Piri. Not all the instruments actually play Sanjo,
sure,
because Sanjo, you have to play a wide vibrato. So not all the instruments like singhwang or like hun or some of these other instruments, you can't really make traditional Sanjo on them. In the last years, they've been creating new Sanjo for instruments that were not included in the Sanjo pantheon, but it's not quite Sanjo. It doesn't have the same flavor as Sanjo, but it still uses this idea.
Right,
a lot of
Sanjo.
composers, so Sanjo was originally a pejorative term that the court musicians used to the folk musicians. And when Sanjo was first being developed, it was called hutun karak, means just like scattered melodies. So usually it's translated as scattered melodies. Over time, as Sanjo became more and more developed and more composed in a way, less improvised and more composed, especially during the Park Chung-hee era that they set up this national treasure system. At this time, the national system was established, the different schools were established, and the Sanjo became more and more fixed. So it became more and more of a composition, more and more art music.
Okay. And then how do you become a master of Gayageum Sanjo? What is that process like?
So I'm not really a master. I'm a licensee in the system. And in order to do that, your teacher needs to be a treasure, a intangible cultural human asset. So if you're in the system, then if your teacher is one of those designated people, then you have to get permission from your teacher when they're ready, when they say that you can do it. So then you apply to the government. You have to show that you're an active performer. You have to show all these kind of things on paper. The exam itself, you walk in front of 3 judges from around the country. And they, in the case of my Sanjo is about 75 minutes long, a little bit shorter than that. And they said, okay, so just improvise a Sanjo, 30 minutes, include all the rhythm patterns, include all the melodic modes, and go.
Right.
After the playing exam, then we had an exam of an oral exam. It's much like a PhD dissertation defense.
I was going to say,
so you have to answer
a lot of criteria.
Yeah,
it's going to be practical, theoretical, and experience as well. I'm sure you can't just do it in a year or two. It requires a long time.
Yeah.
So I know this is your second appearance on this show, but it's been a while. So can you briefly remind us of how you got into Gayageum and traditional Korean music as well? Because you were born and raised in the US, of course.
Right. I was born in Washington, D.C. I was raised in Alaska. And when I was 17, I went over to Japan I actually didn't try to be an exchange student, but I ended up as an exchange student because I was too young to do anything else. So I went back to high school in a sailor uniform. And when I came back to the States, my school was famous for ethnomusicology, and they had been famous for Japanese music. So they were starting a Japanese music program. I entered it. I played the Japanese version of the Gayageum called Koto. A year later, I found myself in China at the Nanjing Academy of Arts studying the Chinese version of the Gayageum called the Guzheng. And then I heard, of course, that there's something like this in Korea.
Right.
So I really came for the shape of the instrument.
Okay.
And
can you tell us about the instrument for our listeners who are listening at the moment,
sorry,
who are not
start
seeing
from the
this
beginning.
video? But can you briefly just explain for us, someone who might not know what a Gayageum might look like?
So Gayageum is a 12-string zither. A zither is a little bit of a misnomer, but it's a board with a curved soundboard with a flat under soundboard, hollow in the middle. It has 12 strings, each of which is stretched over a movable bridge called an anjok, which means a wild goose foot. And these bridges are movable, so you can use the bridges to change the tuning. The strings are silk in order to allow for wide bending and big vibrato. The main difference between the other instruments and the Korean version is that we stop each string before we play the next one, so it's a little bit like singing. We don't have harmony or strumming. It's not like a harp at all, even though people think it should be. It's not. We only play one string at a time, and it's really like singing through a string.
So the instruments themselves are similar, but it's the way you play that makes Korean and Gayageum different, you're saying.
Right. Especially through these 3 instruments, if you hear them side by side, you really understand that the instrument doesn't contain the culture so much as the person who's playing the instrument. Interesting.
So what is it about Korean Gayageum that really drew you then? What are the characteristics that you would describe to someone to say these are what it impassions me?
What I really like about playing Gayageum is that we don't play alone. In the video I did for you a little bit earlier in the studio, I don't have a drummer, but it never plays. We actually never play Sanjo without a drum, even though I just did. So we have a drum accompaniment, and the Gayageum player is always in dialogue with the drum accompaniment, which keeps the 장단, which means the rhythm patterns that we go through in the Sanjo. So my Sanjo has 7 rhythm patterns, and it starts up very slowly, gets faster and faster and faster, kind of ecstatic music, and that by the end of it, so it can start out quite sad. With a Gaemeonjo is a kind of a sad mode, but as it gets faster and faster, the rhythmic modes pick up speed, and you tend to lose yourself in playing together with the drum. So you're kind of talking together. So I really like this aspect of not playing alone and always playing with the drummer. This was exciting.
Yes, our listeners may not know, but yes, you played for us earlier, which we recorded, and the full performance will be available on the KBS World English YouTube page soon as well. How difficult is it to play the Gayageum? How difficult to master? Was it challenging for you?
Yes. One of the reasons why it's challenging is because I didn't know the rhythm patterns was coming in. And I also didn't know what the Gayageum was trying to say aesthetically. It's quite different than the Japanese instrument and the Chinese instrument and the Vietnamese instrument and the Mongolian instrument, which all has this kind of instrument. As I said, it's quite in dialogue with the drum. So if you don't know the rhythm patterns, you don't even know where to clap. This often happens now with Korean audiences who've lost touch with Korean traditional music. They try to clap along, but it's always not with the rhythm. So they're clapping in 4/4 time, Western style clapping, but it doesn't go with the rhythm pattern. And this was also the same for me when I first started. I didn't know how to count. With you can count it, you can read the notes and all that, but how to really feel it and where to put the accents, where it really speaks differently than Western music. So this is what's interesting to me about it, and I tend to also ride the rhythm and forget myself.
It sounds like then a teacher is really important when it
so
comes
you're asking
to...
about I forgot what you asked. I forgot what you asked.
But yeah, no, it sounds like a teacher is very important then.
Yeah, it's
to
very
learn
important.
The Gayageum, especially as Sanjo understand. That
Right.
has to be passed down. It can't just be learned off a book or something like that.
No, and one thinks, as you progress, you think you did it and you didn't do it, and then you've listened years later and you think, oh my god, but as you're doing it, you think you're doing it right. So it takes a long time to acquire what they call an ear, right? Like 귀가 맑다. So to be able to hear the thing that you're actually trying to do, because there's so much interference from Western music, even in Korea now. I mean, all we hear is K-pop on the radio, right?
But it's also incredible as well because you've been playing the Gayageum for how many years now?
More than 30.
More than 30 years, but you still have a teacher, and
Yeah.
the teacher's still telling you off.
And
You
not
were
just
saying,
me, I'm not the oldest student,
Right.
We all still going to our teacher, and she's in her 80s now, so I don't think we have another 30 years that we can study with her. But we're all still learning from her, and we're all keep having to correct ourselves and try to get the really flavor of what she's trying to convey to us, that from her own knowledge. And she comes from a time where this was kind of more normal music. She could be really immersed, and I think it's harder and harder to be immersed in 국악, and therefore the sounds and the intervals and the rhythm, I mean, everything's a little bit starting to slip.
Interesting. Okay. And you're a student, but you're also a teacher yourself. You're a professor at 백제대학교. 배제대학교, sorry. You introduce Korean students to traditional Korean music. That is so interesting in itself as well. How do you find that?
Every year it's different because the students' knowledge of 국악 becomes less and less and less, and they became less and less and less connected to it at all. So most of my students, they haven't seen the instruments up close. In fact, this isn't just a problem for Korean instruments. This is a problem for instruments at all. Most of these students sort of went through school during the COVID era, so their experience of music is through their phones. It's not through. So they're quite curious about how this wooden instrument and silk strings makes a sound. Actually, if you go to Seoul National University, everybody's I think played violin and piano since they were kids. But my students are a different, from a different place and a different background. So some of them do play music, but a lot of they don't have a lot of experience going to live shows.
Sure.
I mean, Sai came to our school a few weeks ago. But that's a different kind of concert than hearing natural materials make sound.
You said in the past your role is to promote Korean music to Koreans inside Korea. Can you tell us more about that? Why has that become your goal, and how do you plan to do that? Why is that important, do you think?
If I'm playing in the West, I'm considered just inauthentic from the bat, so it doesn't really make sense. But here, especially with having become isuja, there's a kind of how do you say, 인중하다, that there's a kind of, having passed the exam, I think that it causes people who don't like 국악, or not interested in 국악, to look at 국악 again. And I think that's kind of important because people have a lot of people have dismissed, not interested. If 국악 comes on the radio, they change the channel. So people don't really listen to 국악. And I'm hoping through getting this license that I can be one of the people who helps offer people a second glance at 국악, a second listen.
Yes, you're a real pioneer in that way, and I would say. It's been fascinating to talk to you today. We're out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there, but it's been an absolute pleasure. We've been talking to Jocelyn Clark, the first non-Korean master of Gayageum Sanjo. It's been great to have you with us today.
Thank you.